is Rosemary Jackson, and I will be doing the SAFMEDS checkpoint 2 and the timer on my watch. I don't know how to shuffle. Reinforcement that requires the involvement of others, socially mediated reinforcement. Schedule of reinforcement in which reinforcement is contingent on response being different in the same specified way from a previous response or specified number of responses. Lag reinforcement. Assessment method that includes gathering information from familiar parties through surveys or indirect preference assessment. Designed to evoke a specific initiative response and may include teaching a child to say word to brush plan models. Okay, and that was 1 minute. I'll keep going. Might include a child learning curse words from peers or how to sing a song on the radio, unplanned models. Reinforcer generalization when it happens, train to generalize. An assessment method that includes gathering information from familiar parties, caregivers, teachers, the individual through surveys, direct preference assessment. A two-dimensional graph with logarithmic scale y-axis so that equal distances on the vertical axis. Semi-logarithmic charts allows the client to access the reinforcers that have previously maintained the problem behavior, alternate behaviors. 1, adhere to documentation expectations, participate in observations or rehearsals, supervise the expectations. Skills are identified in sequence. Definitions for these skills should be developed and mastery criteria identified. Supervise the goal setting. A schedule of reinforcement in which the response requirements of 2 or more basic schedules must be met in a specific sequence before reinforcement is delivered. Chain schedule. Allocation of responses to choices available on concurrent schedules of reinforcement, rates of responding across matching law. A stimulus change that functions as a reinforcer and increases the frequency of behavior that it proceeds as a result of evolutionary development. Primary unconditioned reinforcers. When skills trained through behavior skills training are tested in the natural environment to allow learners to contact contingencies described in training. In situ assessment. Variety of techniques for gradually transferring stimulus control with the minimum of errors. Errorless learning provides physical assistance as needed by having the instructor remain close to the learner and provide more restrictive prompting only when the learner is not responding correctly. Graduated guidance. A stimulus change that functions as a punisher and decreases the frequency of behavior that it proceeds as a result of evolutionary development. Primary unconditioned punishers. Prior preference assessment, potential tangibles that could act to increase future occurrences of behavior. Potential reinforcers. Embrace the participants' values, expectations, traditions, and ideas. Cultural match. Two-dimensional graph that shows relative distribution of individual measures in a data set. Data points aren't connected. Scatter plots. Covert events typically accessible only to the person experiencing them. Private events. Punishment that requires the involvement of others. Socially mediated punishment. Stimulus change that follows a behavior of interest. Consequence. Experimental design in which participants are presented with response option. Each option is associated with distractive stimulus and leads to different set of treatment procedures. Concurrent chain designs. Schedule reinforcement in which the response requirements of two or more basic schedules must be met in a specific sequence before reinforcement is delivered. Chain schedule describes communication through speech, vocal, verbal. Antecedent intervention that provides non-contingent access to preferred sources of reinforcement. Environmental enrichment. Behavior analysts are required to respect intellectual property laws by obtaining permission to use copyrighted or trademarked materials and providing proper citations, attributions, or symbols, and refrain from unlawful use of intellectual property. Describes the behavior of making noises or sounds without social mediation. Vocal, nonverbal. Teach behaviors to occur with consequences which are likely to happen in the natural environment. Introduce natural maintaining contingency. Use self-instruction, self-recording, set up cues. Mediate, generalize. Teach behavior across multiple stimulus conditions. Train sufficient exemplars. Teach behavior to occur in all settings. Sequential modification. The ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Empathy. The environment in which something occurs. Setting. Terminal goals should reflect the reinforcement that matches the natural environment, maximize contingencies within the natural environment, as well as making consequences. Then reinforcement. Performance feedback to supervisors by their supervisees related to supervision procedures. Upward evaluations. Consolidates, updates, and replaces the former BACB's professional disciplinary and ethical standards and guidelines for responsible conduct for behavior analysts. Compliance goal occurs when the most salient component of a compound stimulus arrangement controls responding and interferes with the acquisition of a stimulus control by the more relevant stimulus, overshadowing. Changing a contingency of reinforcement by gradually increase the response ratio or the extent of the time interval. Schedule thinning. A procedure in which a person compares her performance of a target behavior with a predetermined goal or standard. Often a component of self-management, self-evaluation. Initial assessment of supervisory skills is critical for establishing clear goals for supervision. Interview and direct observation serve as options for this initial assessment. These methods allow for an assessment of the supervisee's knowledge and ability to perform the procedures he or she will be responsible for in her job role. Supervisee initial assessment. Single words or brief descriptive phrases printed along the top of the graph and parallel to the horizontal axis. Condition labels. A schedule of reinforcement in which two or more contingents of reinforcement operate independently and simultaneously for two or more behaviors. Concurrent schedule. Vertical lines drawn upward from the horizontal axis to show points in time at which changes in independent variables occurred. Condition change line. Brief descriptions of the dimension represented by and scaled along each axis. Axis labels. The difference between the costs of a treatment or intervention and the projected benefits, cost-benefit ratio. Straight horizontal line that represents time, aka horizontal axis. Vertical line drawn upward from the left-hand end of horizontal axis. Vertical axis. Observer who is unaware of the study's purpose and or experimental conditions in effect during given phase or observation period. Naive observer. Voluntary credential issued by a private organization that is authorized by members of the profession, not the government. Professional certification. State, provincial, or national government document that is established by law and specifies the privileges and limits of professional practice. License. Written guidelines that provide direction for conducting the practice associated with an unorganized profession. Professional standards. An emotional reaction of anger or frustration, including operant behavior which injuries or is otherwise aversive to the controller. Counter control. Provide clear guidelines for their members to follow when deciding a course of proper action and conducting their professional duties. Ethical codes of behavior. Statements describing corrective, disciplinary, and revocation actions, depending on the circumstances for violations of a professional. Disciplinary standards. A behavioral effect associated with abrupt increases in ratio requirements when moving from denser to thinner reinforcement schedules. Ratio strain. Multiple component treatment package for reducing unwanted habits. Treatment typically includes self-awareness training involving habit reversal. Inadequate professional repertoire, difficulty problem solving and database decision making. Inadequate supervisory repertoire. Negative outcomes associated with failure to provide evidence based on supervision. An assessment method that includes gathering information via direct observation and manipulation of stimuli, including single direct preference assessment. Develop, improve, and maintain the behavior, analytic, and ethical repertoires. Utilize behavioral case conceptualization, problem solving, and support seeking by the supervisee. Positive outcomes associated with evidence-based supervision.